The warehouse is open. Tales from the Warehouse, Volume 35. New faces, new places. Joined by the NHL Program Director at MeiGray and MeiGray.com, our friend Geoff Spaid. Geoff, happy summer. Hockey will be here before we know it. Expo in the rear view. Welcome back to Tales from the Warehouse, sir. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for always glad to be back here. Always a fun time. And yeah, hockey will be back soon, but hopefully it's not 103 degrees when hockey's back. I know that you liked hockey in the desert, but I like hockey in the nice eastern, northeastern climate a little better.
We've done an episode like this before, and it's one of my most fun ones to do of the year, where we talk about new faces, departures from lineups. This year, we're going to do it with a bit of a twist. So we'll talk about some of the MeiGray teams, and there was one team that went, according to some, crazy. Look, you lose guys, you spend, and you get back. The Nashville Predators added names like Stamkos and Marchessault. Just sort of a quick free agent thought, and then I got a twist for you, Geoff.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I look forward to your twist, Scott, but yeah, I mean, Stamkos, Shea, Marchessault, great names. They didn't lose much. I mean, they also brought in, was it, I think, Wedgwood? I think it's the
And
backup
UC
goaltender.
Saros re-signed,
Yeah,
so he
UC
got
Saros
his
resigned,
bag as well.
which shows that this team wants to win now. They are in a win now mode. I think they were really good last season, but let's look at the Predators and be a little critical. I mean, Philip Forsberg set the goal scoring record with what, mid 40s last year?
Mm-hmm.
Like, they've never had a high goal scorer. Now they have two of them, because even though Stamkos is older, Stamkos can still put it in the net. And Marchessault, previous Conn Smythe winner. Shea is a solid defenseman. Put him back there. I mean, you still have Carrier, Yossi, Lazon. You still have a lot of good defensemen, even losing McDonough, even losing a grit guy like Jason Zucker for your third, fourth line. I mean, they're going to be a scary team.
Onward. And we'll do free agent first, then we'll get back to the twist. A team near and dear to both your and my hearts. The
Mm-hmm.
Capitals were as busy as anybody. And this, there's a lot of uncertainty with some of the aging and, for lack of a better term, they're facing a new phase with players like Backstrom and Oshie,
Mm-hmm.
obviously. But people are like, oh, they're cap strapped. Oh, they're this. Oh, they're that. How are they going to do this? How are they going to get young while Ovi continues his chase? How are they going to? And they bring in Jacob Chikrin, and they bring in Andrew Mangiapane and Dubois and Logan Thompson from Vegas, and Matt Roy also from the Kings mentioned Dubois. And I'm astonished by the Jensen for Chikrin trade, like in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
I was not necessarily the biggest Nick Jensen guy, although, and we'll get to this in a second, from a wear perspective, few NHL players or NHL defensemen put wear on a sweater like Nick Jensen, the outgoing
Mm-hmm.
Caps defenseman. Let's pour one out for him from a collector's perspective. Geoff, you know this. Those who have purchased from MeiGray and MeiGray.com, and by the way, we'll go through some more of the new players. If you want to get in line, email sales@MeiGray.com to get on the request list, because that's the way to go, hey, oh my gosh, I forgot that this team just traded for or just signed for. It works. You get contacted, and get on there. As we used to say in radio, get online to get on the air. But Jensen's wear just deserves its own podcast, Geoff. Let's pour one out for Nick real quick.
We'll pour one out for Nick Jensen, but as a reminder, we still have Martin Feravari, who I would argue
Yes.
might even have better wear than Nick Jensen. And though John Carlson, everyone calls him an offensive defenseman, he also has great wear. The Capitals still have defensemen with great wear. We're not even talking about the guys they brought in. So, I mean, yeah, you lose Nick Jensen, who was a lower price point, but the team gets better. I
Mm-hmm.
I was shocked going into this offseason because you had the question mark surrounding Backstrom. He sat out pretty much the whole year. Is he coming back? Is Oshie going to come back next season with his lingering back issues? And the GMs, I say GMs plural because they switched around the front office a little bit,
Yep. Now
said
you have
they
McClellan and Mr. Patrick, young Mr.
exactly
Patrick.
young Mr. Patrick and McClellan, and they said we don't want to lose, we don't want to rebuild, we want to stay competitive, and I think this team's done it. I know a lot of fans and myself weren't too happy with how 22-23 ended, and we weren't too happy about losing every single first round playoff series since the Cup win. But this offseason's the first time in a long time since I remember them signing Garnet Hathaway, where I saw that sign and was like, oh, that's kind of a little exciting. This one, I'm like, wow, this was a really exciting offseason, free agency season, trade season. I mean, Chikrin, so many teams thought the price would be so much higher, and the Capitals got it done for a really good deal. So they've
Potential
got
steal.
him,
Mm-hmm.
PLD. I know he didn't work out in LA, and I know he had flashes of brilliance in Winnipeg, but didn't want to stay there. I'm hopeful. I mean, at worst, the team is in a transition era, and worst comes to worst, Dubois plays out his contract in Washington and is a suitable second, third line center. And I think that's still okay because the Capitals right now are developing the youth and young guys like Lapierre, McMichael, Protas, but they need something to help keep pushing Ovi towards that Gretzky record, which is the real exciting storyline of Washington, though I know some collectors would rather see the Stanley Cup than Ovi.
Understood. And again, we talked a little bit about the goaltenders. Kemper goes out, and I know you inherited Washington Gets PLD's
Mm-hmm.
deal. Kemper on the back end, he's gone. The goalies are, and I say this with the utmost respect, stupid cheap, stupid
Oh
young,
yeah.
and you're like, wow. I mean, all the money's on everybody else except for the
Mm-hmm.
goaltenders. And people love to collect. Charlie Lindgren and Logan Thompson has developed quite a collector following from his time in Washington and
Mm-hmm.
also in his home of Las Vegas. Pretty popular
Mm-hmm.
player. So I'm
Yeah.
excited to see what happens in net. And again, we'll get to the twist in a second. Talking to Geoff Spaid, NHL Program Director for MeiGray. It's Tales from the Warehouse, Volume 35. New faces, new places. Another program team, another new
Mm-hmm.
goalie, and a guy who has had some really, really good times. New Jersey adds a bunch of players, including Jacob Markstrom, Jeff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, New Jersey did what I think New Jersey finally needed to do. I said, well, we have a couple of Devils collectors in the office, and I said to them at the beginning of last season, they had that really like franchise historic season in 22-23. And I told them, like, I like Hughes, I like Heischer, I like Jack Hughes, I like Nico Heischer. I doubt the goaltending. That was Vitek Vanacek, Nico Dawes, Akira Schmid. I had question marks about the defense. They were good young defensemen. And then I had question marks about, that roster. And I said they need someone. You could say it about any team, but everyone needs a Tom Wilson factor. Everyone needs some grit in their lineup. And I'm not talking Ryan Reeves kind of grit. Ryan Reeves has his own kind of grit. I'm not talking a guy who only goes out and plays 3 minutes and fights somebody. I'm talking about a guy like Barbashev. I'm talking about a guy like Matthew Tkachuk. I'm talking about these guys who are going to go out there, they're going to hit, they're going to play hard, and they're not going to let you take advantage of them. And I think that the Devils saw that that's a little bit of a weakness in their system, and they don't have like a hard hitting defenseman. So they went out and they got Brendan Dillon, which I really like. I really like Brendan Dillon. I've loved him since his time in Washington. I
Mm-hmm.
remember, for all those Penguins fans out there, Brendan Dillon and Evgeny Malkin getting into it in multiple cap
Rugged.
games when
Right.
I went. I always loved watching Brendan Dillon. He was one of my favorites. I mean, they get Brett Pesce, they get Thomas Tatar back. So I know there's a lot of Tatar fans out there and a lot of Tatar collectors. So that's one name. Before we get any further, you're going to want to get on pre-ordering or requesting a jersey for Thomas Tatar if you really want one, because he always goes fast. But finally this year, I mean, they moved on from Vitek Vanacek. They got Jake Allen and Markstrom. I think it's a good one too. I think it's a really good one too. I think New Jersey's in a better spot, even though they lost some of their defense, lost some of their players they've had for a while, but they added what I think they've been missing. Now, I don't know if they're a cup contending team. Time will tell, but I think they're going to be more poised to go back to the playoffs this season and not have such a disappointing year.
You also work with, aside from working with Devils fans / Devils collectors, there's a lot of Philly in that building. What are
Mm-hmm.
people saying about the offseason?
I mean, we'll be blunt. Philly didn't do much this offseason, but Philly did one thing this offseason, or one thing happened to Philly this offseason. Michkov came over and Michkov signed. That's really the storyline. That's the headline for Philadelphia. They were one game, one puck bounce. I mean, it was like 3 games, but one game where they lose to Washington after pulling the goalie away from the playoffs. Forget everything else. They were one empty net goal away. Can Michkov get them over the hump? If he is what they say he is, 100%. I mean, Michkov is an exciting rookie. He's an exciting guy. There was all that hype about him when he got drafted. There's all this hype about him now when he's coming into the league, getting ready to come into the league. I think Philly has every reason to be excited, even though they didn't do much other than lock up like Eric Johnson and locked up Michkov. I mean, that's exciting in its own. So I think Philly is in a good spot to see where they can grow and develop.
2 more teams real quick, and then we'll see if we can have a little fun with the twist. Blue Jackets in with Monahan, and the Kraken in with Montour and Stevenson, and a lot of people, and again, you and I both have an appreciation for Chandler Stevenson for what he did with Washington, and then he went to Las Vegas and did it again, and now added for the fancy stats people at a sort of advanced age, he had like a 7-year deal, which people are scratching their head and going, you gave that to him at this point in his career? God bless. I think people are high-fiving the invisible Chandler Stevenson agent. So, but good on the Kraken. Back to the Blue Jackets for a second. Monahan in, dislike?
I like it. I think the Blue Jackets are in an awkward spot, especially considering, their GM was replaced in the offseason. Their coach they had signed Babcock, and then that didn't work out. They've been in turmoil and almost like in a hurricane of just change the last year, 2 years, just this constant cycle. And I think getting Monahan gets a little bit of veteran experience in that room, but you still have Fantilli, who was injured half a season. You have a great goal scorer in Marchenko developing. Dmitry Voronkov, for not being very touted across the league as an upcoming prospect, or at least from what I saw, he's a solid player. I mean, they have a lot of solid guys coming up.
There's a there, and it's growing.
Yeah, they're just young. But the excitement with a young team, in my opinion, is when you find those young players who are going to be stars, or even solid top 6 forwards, top 4 defensemen. You can get in early and you can get early pieces of their career. And that's the exciting thing with the Blue Jackets right now. I know that they have growing pains to work out, but I don't think there's anything to not be looking forward to next season, because I think they're finally going to start that uphill climb back to the playoffs.
All right, we'll get into the collector's perspective, and we'll have a little fun with the twist. Joined by NHL Program Director Geoff Spaid, talking new faces in new places. It's Tales from the Warehouse, Volume 35. The twist this year is, let's take a look at some of these signings. You are the one who gets dirty. You are the one who charts them when they come in and matches them up and gets the eyes on the prize as things come in garment bag after garment bag. This has got to be a super fun time, even though we are in summer. The temperatures are high. The ice has not been painted yet or started to be manufactured yet in the arenas. But talk to me from a wear perspective, Geoff. Who's the wear winner? Stamkos, Thompson as a goaltender, Chychrun, Mangiapane. Dylan, I think, with the Devils is going to be a great wear catch. We mentioned Jensen, he's gone, but Matt Roy may be solid and steady and get the arms a little dirty for collectors, for Caps collectors. Monahan may put a repair or 2 on. I mean, there's a lot to be excited from a collector's perspective here.
Yeah, there's a ton to be excited about. I mean, every team does their repairs differently, and we could spend a whole episode talking about that. But if you collect a specific team, you know what the wear's like for your team. You know what the repairs are like for your team. But looking at just free agents in, and I'll even consider the guys who are still there on that team. I mean, for the Predators, I think Brady Shea, I think he's the candidate, I would say. Stamkos is a little older. I don't think he's hit as much in Tampa. I don't see many of his gamers with much wear. And Marchessault, though I love him, I think just Shea's my pick for a new free agent in the door. Now, you want someone who's on the team who I think is going to be the best wear on the Predators? Roman Josi, hands down. He always is. You want the Predators captain. He is going to get the most wear. He's got the nice C on his chest.
Tons of minutes.
And let's be honest. I wish Roman Josi was on my team. I love
I
Roman
think
Josi.
we
You
all
can't go
do.
wrong.
Right.
So I think he would be the overall pick, but I'm excited for a collector's perspective to see how Shea does. I'll keep going down your list if that's okay. Just kind of
Oh,
keep running
please
through them.
do.
So
Yes.
Washington, I mean, we're gonna go with a defenseman. I think it's gonna either be Roy or Chikrin. For a wear perspective, I didn't follow either one of them too much in LA and Ottawa, but I think one of those guys, and my pick's still going to be Martin Feravari over both of them. I know the constants. I know Feravari. I know he hits and hits and hits. I've gotten Feravari's in because everyone at home, I get to see all these jerseys first, even if they're pre-ordered. I get to look over them, photo match them. And there are times you get a jersey and you look at it, especially how Washington does their stitch repairs. And I just look
Hmm.
at it and go, how did they keep this thing together? Like the whole sleeve is just demolished in just one giant sewn repair. And I mean, that's like Washington. The Predators, I'll flip some of their sleeves inside out, and it's just those heat press repairs, and the whole forearms just heat press repairs. And it's crazy. But moving on, the Devils, I actually think Nico Hischier gets a little underrated for his wear. I think that's my pick there. I think he's a little sneaky of a wear guy. You don't think Nico Hischier, but he does get some good wear across the sleeves. But coming in, I think you said it. I think Brendan Dillon, and I don't think it's close, really. I think Brendan Dillon's going to knock it out of the park for wear. Flyers, I mean, they got the same guys, so who was really good at wear? Garnet Hathaway was really good at wear last year, but once again, Michkov, exciting rookie, can't go wrong getting a Michkov rookie. I mean, you never know what he's going to do. You never know what's going to happen. It could be a Yakupov situation,
Hmm.
or, it could be a Nikita Kucherov situation. It could be so many different possibilities. Kraken, Montour, hands down. Patrick Minnie, great friend of mine, coworker, collects the Panthers. I've seen Montour stuff over and done with the Kraken. And the Blue Jackets, I mean, I can only pick Monahan, really, I guess. But if I have to pick someone else, Boone Jenner's a great choice. I think Boone, for his price point, for his wear, for his history with that franchise, you can't go wrong with a Boone Jenner.
All right. Continuing the collector's perspective as we talk a little bit about the NHL 2024 free agency. And by the way, if you want to get on a list, Geoff talked about, the Michkov rookies, sales at MeiGray.com. Hit up the inbox, get on the request list with the newly acquired player and style, and you'll be happy. There's communication. It's a very, very, very solid process. Is there a player, if any, that was a must buy, Geoff, when they signed with your team in the past? And, we've got loads of examples. I mean, Zdeno Chara for Washington, and I know
Mm-hmm.
those are very, very difficult. I did have a Sergei Fedorov caps at one point in my collection. Wish I still
Jealous.
had it. But Jaromir Jagr also played in
Mm-hmm.
DC. He also played everywhere and
He,
over, multiple decades shy of Gordie Howe. Paul Correa, with the Predators, and bounced around Blues or what have you. I mean, just there's it works. People are like, oh, this person's coming to town. I mean,
mm-hmm.
I'm interested in obtaining a Logan Thompson, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to hit up sales at mygray.com, just like everybody else should and would and have in the past, and let the drama play out. How about for you? Is there somebody you're like, oh, I wish I would have? You mentioned Fedorov, for instance.
I Fedorov would be great. And the one I really wish I would have, you said Zdeno Chara. If there
Mm-hmm.
was a will and a way that I could have gotten or could still get a Zdeno Chara Capitals jersey, I would be over the moon. I don't even care if it's one of those like one period jerseys. Over the moon. I love Chara, his 1 year in Washington. That's the one I wish I could have. But that aside, looking at it this year, I mean, there's a lot of great picks across the teams. Obviously, like you said, and I've said, I'm a Capitals fan. So, like, I'm really looking forward to seeing these guys. I think Chikrin's an exciting defenseman. I think PLD, I don't know how he's going to play. And I'm excited for him, but I'm hesitant on him. And I mean, I think there's some guys that are slam dunks. I mean, if you want guys like Stamkos, Marchessault, absolute slam dunk.
550 plus goals, sales at
Yeah,
mygray.com. Like,
you
that's the
should.
way to do this. Right.
And the thing for the collector's perspective is like I bring up Chara, is when you wait too long and you play the hemming and hawing, I would like one, but I really don't know. When are you gonna get another one? because if Stamkos goes in and Stamkos is a 50 goal scorer with the Predators, you're not going to see a Stamkos. If Stamkos becomes a fan favorite, they're going to disappear. And that's the same with any of these guys. And so if there's someone you've liked, whether they played on a different team like Stamkos, or you just have loved the career, or like the tribute that Pierre-Luc Dubois does for his teammate who passed away a few years ago with his number 80, if you like those kind of guys, send an email, because the worst thing that you can do, and I did it, and I'm speaking from experience here, not doing it, is send an email and send a request. Because if you don't send a request, by the time it comes, you're going to be like, well, I really want this guy. And you're going to send the request and it's going to be, sorry, we're all sold out. Whereas if you are ahead of the game and say, well, I don't know, and I'm just going to use Stamkos because I think he's really the most exciting free agent on this list, is I like Stamkos. I'm really excited about Stamkos, but I don't know what his price is going to be. I don't know if I can afford it. I don't know what the future holds. The worst you can do is email in and say, I want Steven Stamkos. Like, I would like a Steven Stamkos, because at the end of the day, the request list isn't a lock in. It's not saying I'm going to buy Steven Stamkos. It's saying I would like to be offered Steven Stamkos. And sometimes people put that in and they get shocked, at the price, or they get shocked that they get offered it and they're really excited. But if you wait to put your request in, you're ruining your own odds at getting the jersey you want. And then also, final note is sometimes, prices change on players too. If you get in early, like Charlie Lindgren for the Washington Capitals. Charlie Lindgren 2 years ago, he was there 2 years ago, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, he was 2 years ago. I'm getting all my seasons confused. He was a 995 guy. Charlie Lindgren was 995. And at the end of last year, he finished up over that price point. I'm not sure where he ended, but above there. I mean, you look back and you could go back to Ovechkin and you could ask people, what did you pay for an Ovechkin in 2005 or 2006? And I guarantee you'd be sticker shocked at how low of a price it is compared to today. You snooze, you lose. That's really what it comes down to. And if you're not excited about any of the free agency signings, that's fine. Go get a guy that you haven't gotten a jersey for, or one guy that you really love collecting. Go find a good jersey, because it's the new manufacturer too. Everybody, though they don't want to admit it, is going to be chasing the new style.
Sure. Sales at MeiGray.com. Reach out, as Geoff said. So we mentioned, I'm interested in Logan Thompson when he comes to Washington. Sales at MeiGray.com. Have you ever bought a player? Have you ever bought a gamer of a newly signed player from their prior team? And the reason I bring this up, you talked about PLD, and right now, as we record, summer sale ongoing for quite some time. Prices are buyer friendly. There's PLD Columbus Blue Jackets right there for you. And I'm certain that there will be some Caps fans now, as we get a little closer, who say, I like this guy, and it's a chance to get something that maybe you haven't gotten before. And then sort of the other topic is, the value of the player. You mentioned like Charlie Lindgren. His value to his team has gone up. His value to the collectors has certainly gone up. And a player like PLD, who, yes, has had struggles. I'm not going to sit here, we'll call it what it is, but he's not lived up to what his potential in Winnipeg, in LA, in Columbus. If he goes to Washington, not if, he's going to Washington. If he finds a new home and succeeds, can that help the value go up? You're darn sure it's going to go up, and you're going to say to yourself, and again, no guarantees, as we like to say, past performance may not dictate future results, but if PLD is put in the proper position and he benefits from all that is around him and succeeds, you're going to be glad you picked that up at the summer sale, and you're going to say to yourself, hey, this is pretty cool. Again, do it for the love of the hobby, obviously, but also, hey, I don't want to say take a flyer, because I'm not here to recommend. This isn't a gambling podcast, but you know what I'm talking about, Geoff. And you'll say to yourself, that was actually this. A, I got a player I liked who's now on a team I love. B, he's doing really well, and I have one of his earlier sweaters. That's a double cool, as the great Gray Richards would say.
That is a double cool. That is a double cool. I personally usually wait to see how they play out. I'm not out in the market looking for a Logan Thompson or a Chikrin personally, but I
Hmm.
mean, you could make the argument with anyone. If Steven Stamkos signed with Washington, yeah, I'd buy a Steven Stamkos Tampa Bay.
Of course, right.
But it's one of those things where it depends on the player. And I have gone back and bought jerseys from players who either have left Washington to go elsewhere or from when they first played somewhere else and then came to Washington. Like one of my favorite things I have in my collection is a TJ Oshie St. Louis Blues jersey.
It's a
And
gorgeous piece.
it's a gorgeous piece. It's great jersey. And it's just one of those things. I love Oshie and I love everything he's done with Washington. And Oshie Blues don't pop up because he's a fan favorite. And that really is what it comes down to because some guys will leave teams and their jersey stock will plummet and you can buy it at a really good price. PLD's probably a great choice for that. I mean, you've got other guys on this list of free agents that we've gone over that their stock's going to stay the same or go down. People aren't happy they left. But there's other guys where that stock's only going to keep going up. And if you can get in early enough, or you can grab that piece from their early part of their career or the later part of their career, as Steven Stamkos finishes up, how many Steven Stamkos Lightning jerseys are there? And how many Steven Stamkos Predators jerseys will there be? It's going to be a harder team to get for Steven Stamkos. So, yeah, I would love to get a Lightning one if I were a Predators fan, but I'd cherish a Predators one way more. So, my opinion on the matter is for those at home who didn't follow my logic, if I talked in circles, is I'd prefer to get the team currently they're on. My favorite team, Washington. I will get another team, but I prefer to get Washington.
Tales from the Warehouse, Volume 35. New faces, new places. Joined by NHL Program Director for MeiGray, MeiGray.com, the great Geoff Spaid. Again, if you're interested in getting on the request list, it's easy. Sales, SALES, at MeiGray.com. Geoff, we talked about the precursor teams. What about, are you going to collect a player after he goes to a new club? I'm sure, again, Oshie's a good example. Immensely popular wherever he goes. Obviously, not the best example of, because of his current health situation. But if there's a player who's no longer on your favorite club, like a Nick Jensen, for instance,
Mm-hmm.
very popular with collectors because of the 10s and 20s and 30s amounts of repairs that he puts on and some timely offense. Maybe you're a Caps fan. You're like, oh, he's now somewhere else. Have you purchased a guy on a team after he left your club?
Oh yeah, of course. I have. I have a couple different guys, a couple different examples. I don't own all these jerseys anymore, but one of my favorite players was Jacob Vrana. I loved Vrana. The thing was, is every game I went to, Vrana somehow would score. He'd get 1 or 2 goals every game, and my friends were always like, "You just need to keep going so Vrana can reach his full potential." But I own like a Vrana Hershey, a Vrana Capitals. I own a Vrana Red Wings. So 3 different teams for Jacob Vrana. I bought Braden Holtby Dallas Stars jerseys
Mm-hmm.
because I loved Braden Holtby. I mean, I own bits and bobs of all sorts of players. Peter Bondra. I used to have an Atlanta Thrashers Peter Bondra. A beautiful jersey, beautiful. But I mean, Bondra was known for his time in Washington, not his time down in Atlanta. But I loved Bondra and I loved that look of a jersey. I love the Atlanta Thrashers jersey. I wish they would come back and bring that style back. But that's a point for a different day. But I mean, there's plenty of players I'd buy. Like if Ovechkin got traded to a different team, I mean, there'd be a mad scramble for it. But yeah, I would look to get an Ovechkin as long as it's not the Penguins. If it's the Penguins, I'm okay.
All right, real quick on the NHL draft, and we could do another podcast on
Oh, we
prospects, and
could.
perhaps we will coming soon. What prospect drafted this year by a program team are you most excited to watch? And maybe it's Tarek Parashak from what's called it was the Cougars. That's it in the Western
Yeah.
Hockey League. It may very well be him. There's a lot of guys that you can keep your eye on. Is there
Mhm.
somebody that's going to start the season on a roster?
I I look at all our teams and I think to myself if anyone has the best chance at starting the season on a roster, I think Caden Lindstrom for the Columbus Blue Jackets, number 4 overall pick, centerman. I, I don't think he will. but I've been shocked before. I don't think any of our teams who picked will have anyone start the year on the team, but I think he's the best choice because it's a rebuilding franchise. It's a slowly turning themselves around. So I think Lidstrom's my pick if someone had to. But like we know, a lot of us know, even some of the best players take a few years to develop
Mm-hmm.
and they'll play a few other places. And I think that's the exciting thing is tracking where these guys go. I know so many collectors who are like, where's the next USA development team? Or where does Team Canada Junior sell their jerseys? Or how can I get this CHL or OHL or AHL or
Sure.
KHL team jerseys just to track these prospects?
Geoff, what do you think about the preseason / training camps? And again, there's a special place and a lot of people love them, and it's to each his or her or their own. You do you. They can be very popular. Other collectors are like, I don't know. But there's something to be said if that's the first one and they make an impression. I think, and I'll answer my own question, then you can take the lead. I think if you're at a training camp or a development camp and you see somebody who's meaningful to you,
Mm-hmm.
and they happen to be a program team where they're getting some of these pieces in or what have you, I think that's where people start their love affair, and they may want to go out and make the jump and take
Mm-hmm.
make the splurge and what have you. I don't know if people go back and go, I've got to have every single one. I think there's, we talk about the hobby as a
Mm-hmm.
connection point. I think you get connected to a player by seeing said player in a development or a
Mm-hmm.
preseason.
Yeah, I don't have a problem. Now, if you're buying a preseason jersey and thinking that this is going to be the next big hit and this is going to be worth so much, you're doing preseason and development camp jerseys wrong. And that's just my opinion. It's for the excitement coming up. I own 2 jerseys for preseason / development camp. Number 1, Jacob Vrana. I found it for a really good price. When he first came to Washington back in 2014-15, he wore number 64. He played 2 road preseason games and number 64 with the 40th logo on the chest. And I found that jersey and I bought it. And yeah, it's not very valuable. And I mean, where Vrana is in his career, it's not really gonna go up in value. It
But it
probably is gonna,
makes you
yeah.
happy, Geoff.
I love looking at that Vrana jersey and being like, that's the one that's like on his young guns. That's the one that he started. That's the first Capitals jersey. And I really like that. I also, the other one I bought might surprise you, not Washington related. Nashville Predators. I bought a Zachary Leroux, and I love Zachary Leroux. I know he's a very polarizing guy. I know Zachary Leroux. You say that name, and people think of him shoving a stick at a fan. But I'll tell you what, you go and watch some Zachary Leroux highlights from Milwaukee. You watch him be an absolute menace on the ice. And you tell me, even if you're a Predators, especially if you're a Predators fan, but even if you're not, that's not a guy you would love to cheer for because he has heart. And yeah, he might not have a lot of self-control, but I'll tell you what, he's going to be an exciting guy. I talked to Gray, Predators fan, and he always said like LaRue's gonna be the next guy. I asked him, is he gonna be like Tutu? And Gray says the jury might still be out a little bit, but he's looking like that kind of player. Gritty, tough, gets in your face, gets in your head. So I did not mind getting, and it's not even like the Vrana was a actual like game jersey, whereas the LaRue is just a practice jersey customized from their development camps. So I mean, it's different things. It depends on what you like. It depends on what players you like, and it depends if you're really going to be attached to a specific prospect or player, regardless if they get traded, regardless if they leave your team.
Geoff, always a pleasure. So again, to
Always.
recap, if you're interested in Stamkos, Shea, Marchessault, Roy, Thompson, Mangiapane, Markstrom, Dillon, Thomas Tatar, Michkov, rookie, et cetera, reach
Or
out.
any of the old
Sales,
guys.
of course. Reach out. Sales at MeiGray.com. Yeah, you know what? Maybe you missed out. You're like, oh, an NAK as we call him here in Washington, Nicholas
NAK.
Aube-Kubel, or one of the gents who's no longer on the Devil. I mean, there's loads of options to start or
Mm-hmm.
augment your collection. Email
Mm-hmm.
sales at MeiGray.com to get on the request list for the new and the old, start a conversation with a friend at MeiGray that you have
Mhm.
not met yet. It's highly, highly recommended. Until next time, and I'm already looking forward to it, the warehouse is closed.